Hello and welcome to my shop. I'm Rick with Rick Racks Woodworking, and this is the first video in a series that's going to be covered on this channel on YouTube that takes us back to the very basics of woodworking, back to the hand tool era. We're going to stay away from the power tools for now and strictly concentrate on how can we get into the woodworking hobby relatively inexpensive and do what we want to do using good old-fashioned hand tools. So the first thing we need to do is we need to look at what tools we need to get started in this craft, and I'm going to go over a few of those things with you. The very first thing we're going to need, obviously, is we're going to need a pencil or a pen, and you can pick those up for nothing. Okay, you can pick them up at local vendors and just about anywhere you go, or giving away pens and pencils, so there's no cost in that at all. The other option that you'll need to go into your toolbox is a scratch awl to tear the fibers in the wood and make a good fine line into the wood for where you're going to be cutting and so forth. So we can use a scratch awl or a marking knife. Here again, that's not going to cost us anything. You can buy them at the local hardware stores or the local woodworking stores, but we're going to make ours where it doesn't cost us anything out of materials we've got laying around the house. But we're going to put this in our toolbox anyway, even though we haven't made it yet. We will be making that as one of our projects. The next thing we're going to need is we're going to need a tape measure of some sort. You can use a regular tape measure like this that you can pick up in the hardware store for between $5 and $6, or if you're like me, you've got several laying around already, so it won't cost you anything to put it in your toolbox. But if you have to buy it, they're going to be $5, $6, $7 depending on which ones you get. We'll put that in our toolbox. Another good measuring device is a good old-fashioned carpenter's square, or excuse me, carpenter's rule. You don't see these very often anymore, but they are really handy devices when you talk about laying things out and marking your lumber for the dimensions that you want to cut. They are relatively inexpensive, and I looked them up online. You can get these for between $6 and $7. So we'll put that in our toolbox. Another measuring device that we can use is a combination square or a tri-square, which is going to give us several things all at once. It gives us a square, it gives us a steel rule to measure with, it gives us a straight edge to mark straight lines, it gives us an area to make a 45-degree angle, it gives us a level as well, all in one tool. These are going to run anywhere from $8 to $10 depending on where you pick them up at, and you can pick them up at the local flea markets for as low as $4 or $5. So we'll put that in the toolbox. The next thing, you're going to need a hammer, just a regular hammer. I don't like to use a real big hammer on my project, so I like to use a little hobby hammer, and you can pick these up for $4 or $5. We'll put that in our toolbox, and if you're like me again, you've probably got one or two of those laying around. The next thing that most of us don't have laying around, but is really necessary when you're dealing with woodworking tools, and that's a wooden mallet. You can buy them online, you can find them in different areas, but these are great for working with wood and not marring your project, not marring the wood up too bad, and they just come in real handy, especially when you start dealing with wood chisels and so forth. You don't want to bust up your handles. But rather than buying one of these, this is going to be one of our projects on the video channel here. We're going to make one, so we won't have anything to amount to anything tied up in that financially. The next thing on the list is once we get everything marked and start working with it, we're going to need some hand tools or hand saws. And I have quite a selection up here, but really all you need is one, multi-purpose hand saw. And I priced those out. You can pick those up, a good saw, 26-inch saw for $12 to $15. So we'll put that in our toolbox as well, but for right now I'm going to leave it hanging on my wall. The next thing, when we start getting into some of the joinery, like the mortise and tenon joinery and the dovetail joinery, box joints and things of that nature, traditional handsaw is really too big and too flimsy for that type of joinery. So we'll be using a dovetail saw or a back saw. They come in several different sizes, and there's a lot of controversy on these type saws, but they're going to range anywhere from $8 to $25 depending on what you get. I'm going to leave mine sitting up here on the wall, but we're going to add that in our toolbox as well. The other thing we need when we start dealing with dovetails and some of the other more intricate cuts that we're going to be dealing with, we'll need a coping saw. And this is a coping saw, and it's a very fine blade. It is the forerunner to the scroll saw, and it is designed to get into places that we need to cut a very fine line, get into areas where we need to make circles and things of that nature, or in areas that are very, very tight quarters. So we'll put that in our toolbox as well. Those generally range anywhere from $5 to $6. We're going to need a angle gauge when we get into dovetailing. These you can find these online, relatively inexpensive. I priced them out. Let's see, angle gauges. I priced them out between $4 and $12, depending on where you get them. And you can pick these up at the flea markets for a couple of dollars, and they never go bad unless you bend the edges, and then you can hammer them back out. So we'll put that in our toolbox as well. In addition to that, you're going to need some marking gauges to mark lines on for your tenons and your dovetails and your box joints and things of this nature. Also, you're going to need to scribe a line in the wood for your saw to run along as you're ripping or cross-cutting. And I have two versions here that we're going to be using. One has a single scribe in there, and the other one has two. These you can pick up at flea markets, and you can still buy them online, but they get quite pricey when you buy them online. Or you can do like I do, and we're going to make our own marking gauges, and I'll show you how to do that in future videos. So we can do that with relatively no expense, but if you buy them, they can be anywhere from $10 to $12. So we'll put them in our toolbox. You're also going to need a good set of hand chisels, and generally, you know, a set of 3 or 4 is really all you need. You can buy a 4-piece set for around $12 to $15. With chisels, you can get into some pricey chisels, but it's not necessary. You can take a very basic set of chisels. As long as you keep them sharp, they'll last you a long time. These here are basically Harbor Freight chisels that I've had probably 15, 16 years, and I don't think I paid but about $8 for them back in, and they're not much more than that now. And they've lasted me a lot of years. Now, I do have some nicer chisels that can get on up into some money, but you don't have to have that. So let's say, you know, $8 to $10 for a nice set of chisels. And we'll put those in our toolbox. Next thing we're going to need, anytime you're dealing with woodworking, you're going to have some clamps. You can pick these up everywhere. I mean, you can pick them up at Harbor Freight, you can pick them up at yard sales, and they're going to range, depending on the size that you get, anywhere from $2 to $8 a piece. Really, all you need to get started is a couple, you know, 2 to 4. So let's say $20 to get you a good set to go in your toolbox to give you some starting areas. But clamps are something you can never have too many of. That's something that my father-in-law used to tell me all the time. And if you go through my shop now, I've probably got 75 or 80 clamps through here, which is a lot of clamps. But when you start doing glue ups and so forth, you know, you get into a lot of clamping. But that's way on down the road. Really, all you need to get started is, you know, 3 or 4 clamps. Another tool that's handy but not necessary, but I find it handy, is a good old-fashioned hand drill. This is a spindle type drill that just has one speed. because of the gears. It doesn't have a gear reduction mode on it, but you can make it variable speed just by speeding up. And a basic set of drill bits to go in the end. I've really come to really enjoy this thing, and I picked this up at a pawn shop for about $6. And you know, you can find different varieties of these all throughout the flea markets and the pawn shops and so forth, relatively inexpensively. And drill bits you pick up at the local home center for, you know, $8 or $10 for a set. Another type drill bit that I really enjoy is the brace bit or brace that you use for drilling. You can pick these up for $8 or $10, but you really don't need that until we get into some of the bigger projects. But it's just nice to have. So really, when you look at what we're putting in our toolbox, for less than $100, you can get started with the basic tools. Now, we can add tools to that as we go along, and we'll go into that a little bit more in depth as we go through this. You know, there's things like hand planes, and that's a whole gamut. I mean, they could range from little block planes to your bigger smoothing planes, your jack planes, your wooden molding planes. I mean, you can get into a lot of variety on the planes, and we'll go into that as we get into this. But for right now, we don't really need that. But if you were going to get into it, you could start with just a regular jack plane. And let me excuse myself for a second, I'll get one. Sorry about that. I had to go to the other side of the shop and get this one. This is a Stanley number 4. This is probably the most common hand plane out there that you see in people's shops. You pick these up for less than $20. Matter of fact, I was at a antique house the other day just looking around at old tools, and I found one identical to this, except it had a little rust on it that needed to be cleaned up. And I started to buy it, but I talked myself out of it because I've got quite a few already. But you know, it was on the table at the antique store, complete with the blade and the frog and everything else. And nothing wrong with it other than it needed to be cleaned up and sharpened. And they had a price tag of $12 on it, and it was, you know, a very well built unit. So we'll just go ahead and put this in our toolbox. Well, this is a multi-purpose plane, like I said, the Stanley number 4. And we'll be adding to that as we progress in this woodworking venture. So we'll just put this over here. Basically, that's all we need to get started. So like I said, for less than $100, you can get started in woodworking and make some very nice projects out of it. So, you know, probably the next video we're going to make, and I invite you to come back and watch and be prepared to build with us if you'd like, is we're going to build a tool tote to carry these tools that we just accumulated to start our woodworking venture. So we need something to put that in, and so we're going to build a basic old-fashioned wooden hand tote. So stick around and subscribe, like to my channel, and if you subscribe, you'll be notified when that video comes out. And you can follow me along, or you can build it with me. Thank you for watching. I look forward to visiting with you again, and I hope you have a blessed day.